This is this week's book. It's called Second Hand Time. It's by Svetlana Alexievich. It was a Nobel Prize winner. Hiya. About 18 months ago, I received a job invitation to my phone. Look, I'll show you. Actually, I can't show you because that would breach client confidentiality and also the company confidentiality, but I'll try to explain it to you.
So this is how my job works. I receive an invitation to my phone and it has the name of the person and where I'm picking them up from and where I'm taking them to and the details of the job, so phone number, any special instructions, that kind of thing.
This particular invitation had a Russian name at the top, or a Slavic name probably more appropriately. But most interestingly, it had a publisher's name attached to it. Goodness, I look tired. The publisher being Fitzcarraldo Editions, which I've done a couple of books of, but at that point I hadn't heard of them, so I googled them. I googled the name. The name being Svetlana Alexievich. Turns out she'd won the Nobel Prize. Now you might think it's strange, a writer who doesn't pay attention to the Nobel Prize. To be honest, I don't pay attention to any of that stuff. Or, oh sorry, the Cranes talk. Yes, the Cranes talk in Bristol. Anyway, so I don't really pay attention to any of those awards because I just find it overwhelming. It's why you'll never ever catch me doing a book haul post, because just the sheer number of those books makes me feel anxious. Anyway, the day came of the job and I was really looking forward to it. I was thinking I'm going to get to talk to a Nobel Prize winner. Job was straightforward. Pick her up from Bristol Airport and take her to the Hay Festival. I stand by just outside of the airport and then the plane lands, I go in and she comes through fairly quickly. She comes out of arrivals and I say, oh, can I take your bag? You know, the usual sort of thing. She doesn't speak any English. She speaks Russian, which is her native language, her mother tongue, and German, very good German, which she continues to try to speak to me in because, of course, English being a Germanic language, I might understand it, which I just don't. I did German in school, but the word for, as you'd expect, the word for air conditioning in German is a massive compound noun. The reason why that word is important is because she, as it turns out, was always cold. I tried to give her my phone so that she could look up the word and then translate it, but sadly she wasn't too tech savvy, which is totally fine, by the way. I mean, she wrote a book which won the Nobel Prize. Like, I think we can forgive her a couple of things. Eventually she came up with a solution, and that solution was to basically put her shawl across the air conditioning vents so that she was warm, which is again totally fine, and I admire her for that bit of left field thinking. So I figured one of the best things to do is probably go and buy her book and then actually see if I can read it or not, and then of course get it signed, because, you know, how often do you meet a Nobel Prize winner? I go to Waterstones and ask them about it. There's quite a big Waterstones in Bristol, and this Fitzcarraldo Editions, if you are watching this, the overriding, in fact everybody who I've ever spoken to about your books, is how beautiful they are. So whoever is in charge of your design and graphics, done a great job. I ask an assistant to whether they have the book in, and the first thing he says is, oh, it's in a beautiful cover, it's a beautiful book. A couple of days pass and I'm sent back to Hay. I get there and I park up and I'm sent to the green room, which is exciting. So I get a cup of tea and try to look like I belong there. I mean, I'm in a three-piece suit, so, you know, I kind of look like I might belong there. And there are loads of famous people in there, like Olivia Colman, who I think I caught her eye. She'll probably never remember that. And there was a Pink Floyd member, and some other writers, and that bloke out of Kick-Ass. And Benedict Cumberbatch. Being there was quite an amazing experience, really, because I sort of thought, well, maybe I should leave something here and then come back for it. And, you know, maybe in the future I'll actually make it into the Hay Festival as someone who's speaking. Anyway, my ambitions aside, eventually after about, I don't know, half an hour of waiting, Svetlana came out, and she was surrounded by people, well-wishers, as you'd expect. She'd just done probably quite a good job of doing a talk, although in Russian she had a translator with her. And then we went out to the car, we put her cases in the car. I asked the translator to ask her about signing my book. She signed the book. Here you go. It says, "I'm reliably informed by this person here, in memory of the meeting." I suspect it probably says, or in memory of our meeting, maybe. I'm not really sure. Either way, very nice. And we set off. So we drove from Hay to basically the other side of London on a Sunday evening, a beautiful summer's Sunday evening, blue skies, and it was so green, it was blue, it was almost blue. Do you know what I mean by that? We drove through Welsh villages, back roads and tiny little places and the rolling hills, and eventually this gave way to motorway, and then we drove across the south of England, and it was of course very hot. I basically ruined a shirt because of course no air conditioning, because Svetlana is always cold. And then we made our way into crowded London, and we drove across London. I think it was a bank holiday Monday. It wasn't a Sunday, it was a bank holiday Monday. Stupidly, I thought that the centre of London would be clear, so we went straight through the centre of London, which wasn't too bad. I mean, it wasn't a huge time penalty, but of course there were a lot of people out, so there was this kind of revellers everywhere, and I had this overwhelming feeling all the way through it that it's sort of vaguely patriotic. I'm not really patriotic or nationalistic, really, but there's this Russian woman who's written this book, which is about all of these terrible and wonderful things which happened during an extremely difficult time in history of her country. And here she is in this kind of idyllic, peaceful country, the old enemy. I don't know. I don't really know where that thought goes, but it's sort of semi-interesting, isn't it? One of the key things that we sell our business on, the chauffeuring that is that the drivers don't speak unless they're spoken to. Well, obviously this wasn't a problem in this particular case because we didn't have a common language between us, so it didn't really matter. But I did feel a kind of sense of not kinship, that's pushing it too far, but I did kind of feel a sense of that we were in the journey together, and it was actually a really nice journey. Anyway, I ended up dropping her off at the hotel in, a nice hotel in London. Of course, made sure that with the front desk that her room was very warm, that all of the air conditioning was turned off, and then made sure that all of her cases were in her room. We shook hands, a warm look was exchanged, and I left. And then, as happens with these things, the book that I bought and I had signed and is intimidatingly thick sat on the pile for, well, until about a week ago, and I started reading it, and boy oh boy, it won the Nobel Prize. I guess when you hear about good prizes like this, you sort of doubt that, maybe it's going to be a bit boring, but there's quite a bit to say about this thing. I mean, it's pretty easy to say that this book is staggeringly destructive and awful in places. It's, goodness me, there is incredible acts of violence in it. I need to be clear, I don't mean incredible in some kind of glorified way. I mean it incredible, extraordinary, stuff that you think you would only see in films. Stuff that you would see in a film and think, that's never happened. But, yeah. It also contains incredible beauty, incredible light, incredible hope. But just to try to get away from all the extreme stuff, to try to look at some of the themes in the book, I mean,
one of the main themes, I think, one of the words that keeps coming up is the word faith.
Nietzsche talked about this, and it's hard not to avoid Nietzsche at the moment if you watch any kind of philosophizers on YouTube or people talking about faith and those kinds of things, because Nietzsche was quite clear about the fact that once God was out of the way in the Enlightenment, then the human race would really struggle to replace God with something, with faith in something. And it's largely thought by lots of thinkers out there that the 20th century was the reckoning of so the Soviet Union, that capitalism, that fascism have all been ways to try and replace faith. And this book is totally full of references of faith, of people who had faith in the people, in the Soviet system. And over and above that, they kept that faith so strongly that they would grass their neighbours up and send them off to camps because they believed in the Soviet system. They would grass their friends up or their relatives up or their children up because they believed in the system. They believed in the identity of the group way over and above the identity of familial ties. Don't misconstrue me here. This isn't a Russian problem. This has happened countless times in history. Recent example would be Rwanda. That particular chapter saw similar familial ties broken through murderous ideology. Also, don't get me wrong on the point that it wasn't all hell. This book is not completely full of terrible, horrible things happening to people. Some of these people have a happy time. They have happy times in their lives. And some of them really regret the fall of the Soviet Union. They really see it as a great tragedy. The depth of the stories in this book are incredible. You will read stories that are deeper, more dense and more beautifully told than whole collections of novels in just a few pages. It certainly puts the whole celebrity autobiography genre into perspective, that's for sure. If you have any taste for writing reality, this is a must read. But it's bigger than that. It's not just a must read for if you're writing something or if you're interested in the Soviet Union. It's a must read for our times. It's a must read for all times, really. It's a historical document. It's a way of understanding the past and the present and possibly the future. For me, it not only helped me understand the former Soviet Union in a much deeper way, primarily it helped me understand all of this. Not just Victoria's Secret, but, capitalism. It helped you understand where the alt-right are coming from, where the followers of Jordan Peterson are coming from, where the followers of Jeremy Corbyn are coming from. Because let's not beat around the bush, this doesn't seem to be working. And the sooner and the closer we get to nihilist capitalism, the closer we get to destruction. And so contrary to what I've been thinking for years, atheism and nihilism is not the answer. People can't accept it. People need belief. They need belief not only in a bigger system themselves, but also in themselves. If it sounds like I'm waffling or grasping at straws, it's because I am. The impact of this book is going to be with me for some time, I'd imagine, and I'm going to be thinking about it for some time. Also, it should be noted that no one really knows what's going on at the moment, and it appears to me that even the best cultural critics are grasping at straws. I'm not a cultural critic, by the way, that's not what I'm saying. Although I suppose by the act of actually reviewing books and then talking at a camera in my room by myself actually sort of makes me look like I want to be. Maybe I do, I don't know, who cares. As always, the last word goes to the author, or in this case, actually, someone she recorded. Back then, we're going to be the first to fly over the North Pole. We're going to learn how to control the northern lights. We'll change the course of the mightiest rivers. We'll irrigate the endless deserts. Faith, faith, faith. Something higher than reason. I would wake up to the sound of the national anthem instead of my alarm clock. Unbreakable union of free republics, for ages united by mighty Russia. We sang a lot in school. I remember our songs. Subscribe. Oh, check out the Patreon. Only for the writing though. You don't get charged for this stuff.